Welcome to another conversation in People in Fundraising. This podcast features interviews with nonprofit professionals who discuss their career journeys, lessons learned, and enthusiasm for working in fundraising. And here's your host, the founder of People in Fundraising, Tim Wilson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode in Season 2 of the People in Fundraising Conversations series. Today, I'm really excited to welcome Joanna Schofield to our program. Joanna, you are the first guest from the state of Maryland, so I'm glad to see you. And I'm wearing the Donor Participation Project t-shirt that I graciously got from Louis Diaz. This is his fundraising effort. And I was talking with him a few weeks ago, and he said, Tim, if you can ever get Joanna Schofield on the program, she'd be a fascinating guest. And I was delighted to tell him, Joanna, that we had already been in touch, and here you are today.
I am here today. Tim, thank you for having me. I'm excited that we can connect. You actually reached out to me in, I think, May of 2022. So a long time ago, and I was at that point finishing my master's in NGO management. I cannot even fathom fitting anything else in my, and I appreciate you looping around with me when things are a little bit more manageable in my headspace for us just to sit down and have a little bit of time together to connect. And I appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you. And thanks for bearing with me as I circled back a couple times to say, hey, is now a good time? I really wanted you on the program, so thanks for sticking with it. So tell us, Joanna, your title, your institution, and then we'll take it into the actual Q&A, please.
Perfect. So I am a development officer at Johns Hopkins, and within Johns Hopkins, I work at the Bloomberg School of Public Health, and my job there is split. So I kind of have two jobs in one. For half of my time, I'm supporting pipeline development for the school's fundraising platform. For the other side, I am doing what's a little bit more like a small nonprofit. There's a center in the school that I run the entire fundraising program for. So everything from principal, major, foundation, annual gifts, event, all of it, wow. I am in charge of that. And that's at the Moore Center for the Prevention of Child Sexual Abuse.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fascinating. I would love, as we get into the Q&A, if there are ways to bring into your responses just some insights, a little more about the responsibilities in that dual role. That'd be really fascinating to hear.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your introduction. And Joanna, the first question, the standard I ask every guest, just tell us, please, how you entered the nonprofit social impact sector.
So it has been, like many people, winding, but some of it has been a direct path. Since I was a wee little child, I was always very passionate about international development. So disasters and areas that need some major partnership with that are experiencing hardship. I went to college for that and decided I was going to study languages. I love the communication. I studied like 5 or 6 languages, and I realized near the end of that time that I'm really bad at languages. Oh. And my goal of being this fluent person who could interact with people all over the world fell on its face when all the languages blended in my head, and I would speak one sentence and 3 languages would come out.
Oh, interesting.
So for international development, I was also not an engineer or a doctor or a public health worker. And I really did not have a lot I could just bring to the table beyond just, I care about this issue. After, right around the end of college, I started working at a nonprofit that does development work in Latin America. They work on land ownership for people who are farmers and to give people kind of that ownership of their future. It's Agros Foundation in Seattle. I did some grant writing and volunteer coordination and until the funding ran out from the grant.
Oh,
From there, I jumped into ESL and worked at a Korean school and taught different aspects to students there, really delving into my love for international things.
sure.
And I learned about a Nobel Peace Prize winner. His name is Muhammad Yunus,
Oh,
and he really believed in helping people in need by the use of business, and how just doing handouts is sometimes creating more dependency. And
mm,
how do you give people the opportunity to, again, own their own future? And
yeah.
I decided maybe I should look into business, since all of my other attempts at languages were a failure. And when we moved to Maryland from Seattle, I started working for a business and decided I was going to use this as an opportunity to learn everything I could.
Mm,
So I got into the marketing, to the sales, to the operations, to the tech build outs. And I was just, anytime something was offered, I said, yes, I'm going to do that.
oh,
And loved all that creative work, and was in that for 5 years, and got to the point where I said, I think I'm ready to get out of this. I've learned what I can.
mm,
And one of my marketers had been hired at a college, a local college, and said, part of what you do in your business world on lead development for your marketing team is the same or similar to prospect management. And
oh,
so she kind
wow.
of got me into the education piece, which is so important for changing people's outcomes, education. So I'm very passionate still about international development, but I care a lot about education and children's issues, environment, and mental health. And so
Mm,
those are areas where I'm working on those now. I can do it through fundraising and give people
yeah.
the resources who maybe are the doctors or engineers or the linguist or all the other amazing people out there. If I can help them bring resources to do their work, then that's pretty amazing.
That's fascinating. I mean, what a varied, as you mentioned, kind of a winding path, but what a rich experience, professionally before you got into nonprofits. And I love that you've been able to find avenues now in your role that really dovetail with those passions and interests from before you got into this field.
Yeah,
Really,
I definitely feel like I've been able to just add on instead of having an experience and leaving it in my rearview mirror, but it's just more, it's been a development, and every position that I get in the future can benefit from all these different experiences for sure.
oh, definitely, definitely. Um, I'm just wondering, how, because burnout is such a topic, and
Mhm.
in our field, and I just wonder, like, given the, sometimes the heaviness of um, relief efforts and helping people out, how do you, kind of emotionally, mentally balance all, in the aggregate, all the work that you do, but
Yeah,
also maybe, how do you go from helping to advance assistance in one area of need to then switching to advance it in another area? Because you mentioned, for example, preventing child abuse and other things in that center at Johns Hopkins. So, how do you kind of switch gears using the same skills, but also kind of keep yourself invested, but also not like overly drawn in to the point of exhaustion?
that's a great question. I am a very passionate person, and I've come to accept myself as someone who, if I'm going to be doing something, I'm going to be all in. And
Yeah.
so there's always going to be an element where I'm going to be pushing the boundaries of burnout, just because if I'm going to be doing it, it's who I am. I want to give my whole self to
Yeah.
that. So I think just acknowledging that it's part of the experience, and it's not so much to fight against it, but to try to flow with it. And so when you're starting to feel it, making sure, like, okay, let me make sure I'm having moments of fun, or
Yeah.
um, maybe it's okay not to get something done one evening. Let me just stop and step away,
Yeah.
but also to accept that part where what I'm doing, I really care about. So fundraising for the prevention of child sexual abuse, that's so meaningful. And knowing that you can prevent people from harm, that's fantastic. Yes, you don't need to burn yourself out, but also just connecting to the impact is rewarding, and it is its own source of energy. Your work matters, and it makes a difference in the lives of people. And with the Bloomberg School of Public Health, they do so many amazing things. So all those things I listed that I really care about, they do all of those. And so sometimes just pausing and saying, all right, let me get more connected to what the work is being done and listen to a speaker at the school on their work. Last week, I went to hear someone talking about the efforts they're doing for Lyme's disease. And that's so meaningful. And that it just energizes me on being with people who want to save the world pretty much. And they're all doing it in different ways. So I think just making sure as much as you give, you're finding those points of energy that motivate you. And while it's okay to be passionate about things, making sure you're finding kind of joy in that passion as well.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I have a quick tangent. Right here, there's a little medallion from a good friend of mine who works in Iowa. And I think just for, I'll just say that he works in law enforcement in Iowa, leave it at that. But he talks, very similarly about, one day they're investigating internet crimes against children. Another day they're investigating, drug trafficking or immigration, trying to smuggle immigrants. And it can be overwhelming, as he told me, but then it's also like, well, but, these efforts are helping my community. They're helping the city I live in, they're helping the towns, and to not lose sight of that, because that, that passion that you talked about, finding, we're moving the ball down the field a little bit, and we got to take satisfaction in that too. So
yeah, there's definitely times when I'm talking to people that I realize I need to go take a walk afterwards. But I will say it is one of the most awarding things in my job is getting to have people share things with me. And as a fundraiser, to be able to connect with people where they're at and to hear their stories that brought them to where they're at, that's a gift. And I really approach it with a high degree of humility, that they don't need to share those things with me. And the fact that maybe hardships that they've experienced or loved ones of them have experienced, that they're taking that to be able to come to me and discuss what can we do about it so it's different for someone else, and so we can prevent it even happening for others, it's a gift. And I know one of the things you wanted to talk about today was, what stretches you. And I think sometimes just being honored by the ways people share their lives is amazing. And it is a stretch, but also it's something that it hits me deep in the heart on how people are responding to pain that they might have experienced.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, well said. And thank you for sharing that. So I appreciate you also, Joanna, kind of pivoting to various follow-up questions. Another reason why I wanted to have you on the program today is that you have gone from that prospect research background you mentioned earlier to now working in frontline fundraising at Johns Hopkins. So I'm curious, and I would love to have you take the time you need to share with us how you maybe saw this new path for yourself. How did you pursue it? Were there people that helped you along the way? Just how did that all come about, please?
I feel like the fundraising world and maybe the nonprofit world can be very siloed in how we view people. And I've noticed that a lot of times when someone is doing something, we think that's great. You keep doing that. And as I mentioned, I have had such a winding path. I don't see things as much in those type of boundaries. And I am definitely a person where I'm a little bit in the middle, where I'm good at everything, great at nothing, right?
Uh-huh.
But that allows me to be able to pivot and
Yeah.
to kind of lean into different areas. I actually first brought up the idea of going into from prospect management to fundraising about 9 years ago. It was
Oh,
really almost within a year of going into the back into the fundraising world that I said, well, how about this? I had worked on creating a prospect management program for the college. I was
mm,
starting to get things systemized, ready for the next thing, want the next challenge. Seeing the people across the hall, I'm like, I can do that. And so I brought it up. Obviously, because I had a lot of diverse experiences in the past, I was able to kind of lean on that. And so
mm.
that was one of the benefits of coming from outside the nonprofit world, is kind of knowing the diversity that can be within each person on what their skills can be. I think during that time as well, um, there was a little bit more of a mindset that fundraising is for extroverts who just
Yes.
like to talk people's ears off. And, maybe if you can manipulate people, that's not necessarily a bad thing. And I am an introvert, and there might have been some pushback on, well, you can't quite do that because you like data and you're good at data. um, and really, I was told then that that's not how things are done.
Oh,
So
okay.
I ended up uh, leaving that place, and it was a really amazing team where I was, and my boss was incredible. So it was hard to leave, but I said, I can't keep doing things at this level. I have to be doing more. I'm a person who's always wanting to push and learn and grow. And I
Yeah.
went over to Johns Hopkins, and that was the first time I'd worked somewhere where I was entering a program that already existed. In all
Mm.
of my previous jobs, I'd always built things from the ground up. So that
Oh.
was itself a different experience where it's like, all right, you're not in charge, you're not building things. This is your time to learn and to grow on what's already there.
Mm.
Probably within a year there as well, I started saying, all right, let's see what else we can do.
Yeah.
And I actually started talking to people at the Bloomberg School of Public Health just because they did align so much with my passions. At that
Mm.
time, I was at Hopkins Central, so I was a consultant to between 15 to 22 different teams from university, medicine, and central. So I was working all around. But my favorite team was the Bloomberg School of Public Health. And as I said, I run on my passions, and I set up meetings over several years, about once a year, trying to meet with someone. Hey, is this a possibility? Was told no over and
Mm.
over, and I'd have to pretty much start over as a junior career person. Like I had no experiences ever
Oh,
that would lead
wow.
up to that,
Mm.
which wasn't very viable. And
Yeah.
after being in my position for 5 whole years, I finally talked to someone over there that said, actually, yes.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I immediately applied, and that was Morgan Martin. And she gave me a shot to say, all right, I'm not going to put you in a box just because you're doing good at this. I'm going to believe that you can do other things, and believe that the introvert in you is good for listening and
Oh, yeah.
tuning into people, and it's not a negative. So she was really the first person who gave me that yes answer. And as soon as I
Mm.
had that yes, I was over on that team about 2 months later, which has just been wonderful since.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad it's worked out for you because
Yeah. It was a lot of knocking on the door.
yeah, because I feel like, yeah, I totally agree with you about, in prior times there was sort of a typecast of who would
Yeah.
be a personality fit for frontline and also for prospect development.
Right.
Um, I just am so, and I've never met you before. We haven't even heard our voices until a half hour ago, but I'm just very happy for you because I can tell the passion that you have for this work is really evident,
Mhm.
and that you now have been for several years now recognized with the frontline role, and it's giving an outlet for those passions. So very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have been just over 2 years now on the frontline official side. And grateful every day for the team that I get to be on, and just like my other opportunities, getting to explore how to make a difference in new and different ways.
Sure.
Yeah, it's nice.
I have a quick follow-up, Joanna,
Yeah.
because you talked about introversion, but also talked about passion. And I wonder if you can maybe describe or pinpoint, times when you have felt, those personality traits not mixing so well. So like maybe, a situation and you're feeling the introversion starting to take over, but then you feel like the passion is fighting against that, and you want to lead with the passion. Does that make sense? Like how do you
Yeah, I don't know if I am a full-blooded, far on the spectrum introvert. So I'm more an introvert in regards to, if there's a big group, I might be the talkative one, but I'm okay being the quiet one. But the big thing is when I'm done being with people, I need some time to recharge and just to get my energy back. But I am an introvert that loves being with people and talking with people. And that was one difference I noticed a couple of times in my career. When I was first started at the company that I had worked at, we had an event, and at that point I was just being put on the computer, hadn't gone into the sales and marketing side yet. I was like, all right, I'm going to go and I'm going to work this event. And I noticed the other people were just kind of holding back into themselves, and I went and was introducing myself to the people there. And I didn't realize till about 30 minutes later that the people that I was talking to were actually the people that they were the band members. I had no idea. So you're always trying to work the clients. No, they're just the band members. But I've noticed that on the nonprofit side too, that I love going and meeting people. And so I didn't quite fit the typecast for the research or prospect management person that you want to stay with behind the computer. I love meetings and I love engaging with things, but I definitely need time to recharge afterwards. So I think just making sure you have that time to, okay, let me go be surrounded by trees for 10 minutes and get my tree hugger self out.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you.
I had to get a little bit better at lead identification at that point to be trying to talk with the band members.
Oh, that's a good story. I'm curious, Joanna. We talked just now about personality characteristics. Let's talk a little bit about the skills. So the skills you developed and added to your toolkit in prospect development. And now, what skills from that sector of fundraising do you feel have been helpful? Have you drawn upon in your current role, please?
I'm so thankful for my time being in prospect development. And I think so many of those people are unsung heroes. They work day in and day out behind the scenes. They don't get the glory of, hey, you brought in a big gift. But I definitely think their role in bringing prospect intelligence to the table is understated, especially when you compare it to other industries where kind of like the data people are the kings and their skills are recognized. So I'm thankful for my time to be able to really hone the skills. As I said, I had been such a generalist before, and being able to spend really 7 years on let me focus on this skill and go deep in it was a really cool opportunity. Skill set or tendencies, I'm a process developer. I love thinking about the big picture and how things integrate with each other and the flow of work. And so as prospect manager, you get to do a lot of that. And at Johns Hopkins, the prospect manager person in the past would be kind of an internal consultant. So what are your fundraising needs? Let's go ahead and translate that to how that looks like in data and how we can build a process or a concept or a lead list that you can move off of. And so I was able to really develop that muscle of yes, there's the process, but then let's spend more time on the data behind it and what elements are important for this situation, what is maybe not so much important for another situation, and just to be able to be fluent when it comes to data and processes. As a fundraiser, it's really exciting to be able to incorporate those experiences, because not only do I get to do the planning piece, which is a lot of fun, I also get to do the implementation piece. And I get to have my hands in it. I get to have more control on the outcome and to be able to see that whole side of it, especially with my work at the Moore Center for the Prevention of Child Sexual Abuse, because I am the only development person there. I get to do the whole process, which is a lot of fun. And I get the backing of the giant Johns Hopkins whole development team. So I get the best of both worlds. But it's a fun experience to, I had mentioned to you before, I'm still a data nerd. And I think data is really important. Relationships are also really important, but to be able to incorporate both sides of that is just really rewarding.
That's dynamite. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Very cool. I wanted to give you time, Joanna, to talk with our audience. You've done a great job talking about the road to your career and your passions and the role you have now. I would love to pivot to another initiative that I have to imagine comes out of the passions and the caring for people. So if you want to take it from there with question 4 about professionals who care, I'd love to give you time for that, please.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that. So Professionals Who Care is an organization that is definitely, I have kind of that mother pride. It's my baby. And when I say it's my baby, it's not really mine. I'm part of it. It is an organization that I was able to co-found with someone else who I met on LinkedIn when I was posting about an issue that I was experiencing. So the big picture is I'm president for an organization called Professionals Who Care, and that's my nighttime job. And my daytime job is being a fundraiser at Johns Hopkins. Professionals Who Care stemmed from my own lived experiences being a caregiver in the workplace and realizing that there's a couple of deficits. One, there's no conversations on how are we making sure our policies work for caregivers. How are we making sure we're setting up places where caregivers are not marginalized? And then the other side is how can we make sure we're celebrating caregivers? So how I define caregivers are people who are taking care of someone else who's either disabled, sick, injured, or aging. So you have to help a loved one in a way that's a bit of above and beyond. And there is a silent crisis right now that we're experiencing in our society, that things have changed a lot since the 1950s, where maybe you had the women at home and the men in the workplace, and the women were kind of providing this unpaid workforce to care for the aging, sick, disabled in their communities. Women are in the workplace now, but we're still operating a lot of times in that 1950s mentality that work has to be done 8:30 to 5, sitting in person at your desk uninterrupted. And there's over 25 million caregivers in the US alone who are trying to manage caregiving responsibilities and work all at the same time and wanting to be successful, and having the health of another person on their shoulders, and also realizing that they need to keep their job because you need to be able to work and have insurance and take care of things and have a home. And the workplace is not set up right now to incorporate the realities of the caregiver life, where maybe you need a little bit more flexibility, or maybe you need to work remotely. On the other side of that, so many caregivers that I've met are just incredible, amazing people who are the ones who have stepped up, and they are the ones who are being heroes in their own lives and have amazing empathy, have great stress management skills, excellent communication, because again, they've had to use those muscles.
Yeah.
But it's not really recognized as a value in the workplace if you're a caregiver. And from my experience, from me talking to others and then doing some significant research around it, I learned a lot about caregiver bias and the marginalization in the workplace. And a lot of caregivers won't even say that they're caregivers in the work, because they'll know that they'll be like, oh, you're not going to be as serious about your job and you're going to be focused on something else. And we're just going to poo-poo you and put you on the side instead of making sure that we support them and celebrate them. So I initially posted on LinkedIn about my facing a stressful day at work and how it was actually totally fine, because I have dealt with so much harder things as being a caregiver. And that's where Talia Solo reached out to me from Massachusetts and said, I agree, who's talking about this? I was like, well, no one's talking about this. And from there, we started having conversations, and I focused my master's thesis on the issue. And we've started the nonprofit last year, and we're getting our feet off the ground. We have a website, professionalswhocare.org, and would love for you all to visit or to follow us on LinkedIn, because we're trying to put a voice behind this silent group that really needs a little bit more support around them and celebration.
That is amazing. And I love that you talked, Joanna, about acknowledging caregivers in the workplace, accommodating them and celebrating them, because most of us will be in a situation in our career where we are sometimes caring for young kids, aging parents, and a lot of times both, like that sandwich generation.
Yeah.
And there is such, and I by no means, am I an expert or policy aficionado on this, but I just think anecdotally, like this is a really serious issue in the workplace. And I've seen a little bit of caregiver being very tentative about who they tell, how much to share. The workplace culture, certainly, depending on the organization, doesn't support it. The Family Medical Leave Act is not the solution in most of these situations, because it's a finite period of time, and the caregiving can go on daily for years. So thank you. I'll be honored to post a link to professionalswhocare.org when your interview goes live. What's been the reaction in the almost a year now since you launched this?
Yeah, so we launched it a year ago. We went more live this spring of 2023.
Okay.
With LinkedIn, having our website up. We're really doing baby steps in the development, because we're all caregivers who have full-time jobs. Right. And so really wanting this to not be a situation where we're burning out volunteers, but just taking kind of little by little progression to try to unite people behind this issue. I did want to say, before I give the rest of the answer, I appreciate what you're saying on FMLA, that about 50% of our workforce doesn't even have access to FMLA because of the restrictions around it. So, there's some people who qualify for it, and that's great, and it is limited, but there's a lot of people who don't even have that option. And there's definitely, it creates a lot of hardship and pain on people in an unnecessary way. And I think COVID-19 pandemic really showed the possibilities on how companies and organizations can benefit from having more of a concept of inclusivity and support of the whole person, and not just the 9 to 5 clock in and out, what are you giving me, but the benefit for retention and for attracting the best candidates, on saying how can we make sure to have a place where we see that whole person. And I think there's really a strong financial benefit to organizations for it. I know there's a backlash right now on people wanting to go back instead of go forward in what the workplace can be. But I think that's what really opened my eyes on actually workplaces can be a positive force for people. And when I talk about this, you can tell I care about it. I could talk the entire day about it. It's
Yeah.
something that I think is just not known, and I am on my soapbox about it for sure.
Yeah.
But when I talk to people about it, it's the same thing almost with my fundraising work. Is I hear a lot of really tough stories on unnecessary hardship people have experienced because of the inflexible mindset or the marginalization that happens in the workplace. And I think with caregivers, they have greater financial responsibility because they're trying to cover medical bills, and
Oh yeah.
maybe their loved one's no longer working, or having to hire help. And at the same time, they can experience financial loss at their job because they may not be considered for a promotion, or they might be the first one who's laid off when there's that comes around, lots of different ways. And so there's both the added weight that they have to carry, and then there's the fallout of support at the same time. And it just creates a dynamic that is difficult. And people trust me to tell me their stories, and a lot of times they haven't told other people in the workplace because they're scared of being marginalized, which is a sign that that's a bias if you can't talk about it.
Oh yes. Yeah.
But and so just hearing their stories is really motivating, because there's not much recognition of this as an issue. I feel like when I'm posting things on LinkedIn that sometimes I'm talking to a wall, because who cares about it and why should they care? And no one even thinks about this as a DEI issue. But then I'll have people come and say, this is a really big issue, and thank you so much for talking about this. And then they'll explain their experiences, and it's just completely motivating to say, all right, we need to keep doing this, and we need to stick with it. And you're talking about donor participation project with Luis Diaz, and he's on our board. He's a board member, and just so many different people saying, keep doing this, and also how can I help, because we need to be talking about this.
Yeah. And well, thank you, Joanna, for talking about that. As I did a little bit of research for the interview with you today, I definitely wanted to give you time, because from LinkedIn, professionals who care, advocates for an inclusive workplace, increasing allyship, reducing marginalization, and building community for professionals who are also caregivers. And that cuts across all ethnicities, genders, levels of ability. And as you were talking and I was listening to you, I thought, this is, again, I have a very small awareness of it in the aggregate in terms of society, but a really close personal tie. My parents are both almost 80, and they live in Massachusetts. My sister actually lives near Baltimore, and I'm here in Utah. So, at some point soon, this will be an issue that will, come home to roost for me. I just really appreciate the channeling of passion and energy that you've put into this. And I also am just so mystified that this is not a topic that gets more attention in society.
Yeah, I feel like in a way we're such an individualistic society that if we see someone in need, we see that as an individual, and we don't realize how much injuries and disabilities and all of that, the aging is a team sport. And it does have that village response. It's not just in families like it was the 1950s. I mean, it's very different in regards to, it might be your neighbor, it might be a partner, like, the definitions have evolved.
Yeah.
But we don't recognize it as a team sport. So you might have an organization saying we're really great to disabilities, and if you're a caregiver, your issues they don't exist. It's not needed. And in my mind, it's like if I, let's say, helping someone with a wheelchair into a bathroom, maybe they're not able to move it themselves. It'd be like, no, you can have the person at the wheelchair come in, but you can't. It's like, well, we're connected, and that person's health involves me, and you can't separate the two. And so having a society where we better support caregivers, where there's better outcomes for caregivers, as there's research isn't very great when it looks at the outcomes in regards to health and finances and social health and mental health. It's not great because we don't put support around the caregivers. And so the caregivers are trying to give, but not having their own network, because we're only looking at the person who needs the help, and we're totally ignoring the caregiver. And I think the outcomes for the person needing care would be much better if we had a society that supported caregivers better. And what we're doing is we're the only organization that focuses on it solely on the workplace experience, because that is one of the biggest indicators and factors for what the final outcome of a caregiver is. And, are they forced out of the workplace? Are they stressed out of their mind all the time? Do they have a supportive boss like I have right now? So Morgan Martin is the person who believed in me as a fundraiser, and she also believed in me as a caregiver. And the support that she's given me has completely changed myself, and the amount of stress I was carrying as a caregiver. So we can do really great things with it, and I hope that we talk about it more.
Yeah. Well, bless you, Morgan Martin, for giving that support, and Joanna, bless you too. I would love to follow up with you on this. And anyway, I mean that, because this, up until 20 minutes ago, it was not really front and center in my mind, and it just feels like important topic, and so I appreciate the work that you put into it to date. And
thank you. I really appreciate that encouragement.
Yeah, absolutely. If there are ways that can be helpful, we can talk offline. But at the bare minimum, when we air this, or when I air the conversation with you, that I'll make sure that your website is there, and if there are other resources on the website, I can put that in the comments on your post with this interview, and just try to help you.
That'd be great. I really invite everyone to especially follow us on LinkedIn. We're looking for allies, because caregivers aren't really always free to talk about it in the workplace. The allies are the ones that are going to be really important on changing this, so that since caregivers are often more vulnerable in their positions. So allyship's super important. Even if you don't care about it, I invite you to follow us on LinkedIn to learn more about the issue and to offer support in ways that you may not have realized before.
Wonderfully said. Thank you, Joanna. We have 5 minutes left.
All right.
And I would love to get through just one more question here. You talked, and I don't want to throw guests off, so I always go sequentially here. So my last question here, when you have audiences of strangers or relatives, how do you describe the work you do? Now, that could be your role at Johns Hopkins. It could also be professionals who care. And what do you hope those audiences take away from your message, please?
Yeah, so I'll jump back into the fundraising world, because honestly, that's going to be incorporated in my work with professionals who care, as we need resources there. I like to say point blank that I'm a fundraiser. I do not like the euphemisms leading off the bat. There's an idea that people don't want to talk to fundraisers. I totally get it. But at the same time, I don't want it to be a bad word. Fundraisers are integral to the success of nonprofits, and the work that we do is really important. So I normally kind of just put it right out there. If people want to back away, then that's fine. But I am in the business of fundraising, and I want to that this is what I'm doing. This is what my ultimate purpose is I want to give the resources to the work that's being done to support the mission.
Yeah.
So from there, I do talk about the impact, right? So whether it's giving resources for the prevention of child sexual abuse, which means funding for advocacy so we can get money from the government, or funding for communication so we can change how people talk about it, or funding for the research or the program development, connecting it to the end result of protecting children before they get hurt, instead of responding after the fact and just focusing on that only. How can we get in front of this and use a public health mindset to actually incorporate prevention? With the other side of my job, for fundraising for the school, again, it's about scholarships for students. It's about making sure we can attract the best faculty. It's about the work on the ground, clean water in Africa, or autism research, or I could go on forever because I think the work is so amazing.
Yeah.
But I am direct on it. I'm a fundraiser, but the reason why I'm doing this is because we need resources to be able to make a difference, and we need resources to be able to change. And these are the things that we're trying to change. And so, I think a lot of different people have a lot of different great ways to approach it, but that's my take on it. And I think the work of a fundraiser also can be celebrated. As long as, for me, fundraising is not forcing people to give what they don't want to give to. And it's really about finding what people care about and making sure that they are able to connect the resources that they have to an issue that they believe in and they want to make a difference in, and to make that experience as positive and painless as possible. And to me, fundraising, especially with fundraising around child sexual abuse prevention, it is therapy in a way, to be able to say, I want to make that difference. And so I'm never going to push people to do what they don't want to do, or put a timeline on people that is not comfortable to them, but it's more hearing where they're coming from, finding out how they want to make a difference, and then trying to connect them to that difference. And it's really rewarding.
Well put, Joanna. I admired you for your answer, where it was a nice combination of being bold, like I lead with I'm a fundraiser, and then before I knew it, you were talking passionately about the work you do, and I just think that is a real admirable trait. On both the boldness, and then let me talk to you about why this matters, and give you some indication of the impact you could make. So bravo, that was dynamite.
Thank you. I try to stay authentic and transparent, and
it's obvious.
Yeah. So
well, Joanna, we are up at the 2:00 hour for you, and noon for me on this Friday, September 15th. It's been a real treat. It's been an honor to have you on the program. This was such a enlightening and moving conversation. So thank you so much for the preparation you put into your responses, and the ability to talk, movingly, passionately, and with humility about the work you do and why you are driven to that work. It's been really great. So thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And again, I appreciate you having me here, and just for the work that you do on highlighting the diversity and amazingness of people in our profession. And I just commend you on starting with an idea and sticking with it and doing it in such a beautiful way.
Well, thank you. That means a lot. I appreciate that. So yeah, let's definitely be in touch after this conversation too. So for our audience, you can find Joanna's conversation airing in early November of 2023. It will go live on LinkedIn and YouTube, as well as on my website, peopleinfundraising.com. And again, there'll be resources listed in that post to Joanna's organization, Professionals Who Care. Thank you all for your support, and we'll be back soon with another episode of People in Fundraising.
Bye, everyone.